Hey there, I decided to do a study of making beanies, like, tight-fitting toques, and doing one in crochet and doing one in nalbinding. The nalbinding is done with the Dalby stitch, and the crochet is all just single crochet because I like a dense fabric. In terms of density, I mean, if you hold it up to the light, it's kind of hard to see, but it's fairly opaque, the crochet one, so it does keep out the wind pretty good. I've worn it on colder days like today. The nalbind one is a little lighter of a fabric, a little more porous, especially if you pull it. I haven't worn it outside yet to know how well it blocks the wind, but it's certainly a lighter fabric. Feeling it, I would say it's about 50% of the thickness, maybe 70%. So much better drape, of course, where the crochet one is kind of stiff. But that's, some differences in the fabric. Wool usage. So this beanie, which admittedly is a little small, I kind of reduced a bit too fast. It took 87 grams of yarn. Yarn's a pretty lightweight yarn. 87 grams, just weighed it after to make sure. Whereas the nalbind one used up 49 grams of yarn. So we're talking almost half the usage of yarn. But, that's not really a plus or minus of either technique. The crochet one, like I said, is a little heavier, a little thicker. The nalbind one's a little lighter. Different nalbind stitches, other than Dalby, can be a lot beefier and use up a lot more yarn. So I don't know if we should draw any conclusions about yarn usage, conservation, what's more efficient, because there's so many different nalbind stitches you could use. The same way with the crochet, you could have done like double crochet, made a much more airy kind of cloth, might have used less yarn. It is what it is. Speed. So I'm not the fastest single crocheter, but I time myself, and 10 stitches takes me about a minute single crochet doing 10 stitches. Not super fast, but that's just me. Nalbind wise, 10 stitches took me 2 minutes and 15 seconds. So it's slightly, almost twice as fast and a little bit faster to do crochet than nalbind for me, for this particular stitch. That being said, the size of the stitches. So for me, single crochet using this yarn, each stitch is 4 millimeters high and about 5 millimeters wide. With the nalbind, each stitch is about 10 millimeters high and 4 millimeters wide. So essentially the nalbind stitches are twice as big as the crochet ones. So if you factor that in, plus the speed, pretty close to being equal. Now you got to add in too that when you're nalbinding, every yard and a half, you have to actually splice more yarn on it. So that takes a bit of time. So I would have to conclude that for me, compared to single crochet, the nalbind is a little bit slower. But that's just me and my particular speed. What else can I talk about? Stretch. So the single crochet, nice dense fabric, but there's not a whole lot of stretch to it. So it fits me, but I was very careful during the sizing because, I had to get it just right, because it's not like a rib stitch in knitting where there's a whole lot of give and contract. It's going to fit you pretty exact. So not a huge amount of stretch, but that's its characteristic, single crochet. Again, other crochet stitches might have a lot more stretch to them. The nalbind Dalby stitch, again, not super amount of stretch, but certainly more. I would say like 1.5 times more stretch than the single crochet did. So it's got more give to it. Just so you can see them both on. This is what the nalbind one looks like on, right? Compared to the crochet one. Right. And I talked about thickness. In terms of enjoyment, I just like nalbinding better. Using one needle, the whole movements of it, there's just something about it that really clicks with me, the precision of it, the sense of control, I really like. So that's a big plus for me when I compare nalbinding to crochet, for me. That being said, one of the drawbacks, I suppose, of nalbinding is you do get I worked this one from the bottom up, pardon me, and you do get a fairly pronounced step when you start, because it's essentially a spiral technique, right? You start and then you just spiral, keep on going on itself. You can do nalbinding flat, but that's kind of a different ball game. So there always is a little bit of a step that you could try and minimize and stuff. A little bit of a drawback, whereas crochet you can start it where the step, even working spiral, is kind of a lot smaller. The other drawback from nalbinding, it's not so easy to frog, right? Crochet, you decide, oh my, it reduces too fast, it's not going to fit. I'm just going to pull out 50 stitches and do my increases earlier on, something like that. Much easier. Nalbinding, because of the nature of it being a loop technique, you can't do that. You would have to unravel each stitch, which actually takes a long time because you're pulling the yarn back through, completely undoing the stitch. So frogging and nalbinding is a real pain in the butt. Some people just kind of throw their hands up and say, screw it, and they actually will cut a bunch of the stitches, just pull the ends out, and then start a new end on, which you end up losing the yarn when you're doing that, but it's way faster. It's kind of up to you. That's kind of the end of my comparison. I really enjoyed both, but I prefer the nalbinding mostly because I just love the technique. The fabric's really nice too. So again, just so you can do a comparison one last time. Crochet beanie, all single crochet versus nalbind beanie, dalby stitch. And that's it. Let me know if you have any comments or anything, and I'll see you next time.